20 guns came up the stairwell like a bad prayer. Bumpy Johnson didn't reach for his own. He just watched the hallway, calm as Sunday, until one man stepped forward, smiling like he'd already been paid. Chapter 1. The invitation that wasn't one. The message didn't come with shouting. It came with manners. A knock landed on a Harlem backroom door. Soft, precise, like the man outside had practiced being harmless. The kind of knock that told you he didn't fear what was on the other side, or he'd been promised it wouldn't matter. Bumpy Johnson didn't look up right away. He let the knock hang. Let it seep into the walls. Let the men in the room feel it the same way, like a draft sliding under a coffin lid. When he finally raised his eyes, the room corrected itself. Chairs stopped talking. Breath got smaller. Men who'd been acting tough remembered what tough actually cost. "Let him in," Bumpy said, calm, not curious, not impressed. The door opened and a runner stepped through. Young, clean shirt, hands visible, no weapon showing. That part was the point. If you walked into Bumpy's territory with empty hands, you were either blessed or protected by something bigger than you. The boy didn't meet Bumpy's eyes at first, not from disrespect, more like self-preservation. Like looking straight at Bumpy might make the message personal, and personal messages didn't leave the room. He set an envelope on the table. No seal, no stamp, no flourish. Just paper, heavy enough to feel official. Expensive enough to imply a certain kind of sponsor. Bumpy watched it like it might start breathing. He didn't touch it. He looked at the runner instead. Quiet dominance. No rush. The room learned the lesson again. Violence wasn't Bumpy's first move. Controlling the temperature was. "What is it?" somebody muttered. One of the younger ones. Nerves talking before sense could catch them. Bumpy didn't correct him. He didn't need to. The runner did. "It's for him," the boy said quietly, nodding toward Bumpy without daring to point. Only him. Bumpy's mouth didn't change shape, but something behind his eyes did, like a door locking from the inside. He reached out then, slow, slid the envelope toward himself. A fingertip under the flap. Paper whispering open. Inside was one page, typed. No signature. That was how you knew it wasn't a favor. Favors came with names attached. This was a decision. Decisions didn't introduce themselves. Bumpy read it once, then again. He didn't flinch. But the room did, because the room watched his face the way sailors watch the sea. Not for peace, for warning. The runner stood there waiting for instructions, like a man waiting for a sentence. Bumpy folded the page neatly. Not crumpled, not torn. He treated it like it mattered, because treating it like trash would have been an argument. And Bumpy didn't argue with paper. He argued with men. He set the letter down, flat, centered, like it belonged there. Then he looked up. "Who sent you?" The runner swallowed. "I wasn't told to say." Bumpy nodded once, slow, like he accepted the lie as part of the ritual. Because it was a lie. Of course the boy knew. He just didn't want to die for knowing it out loud. Bumpy turned his head slightly, speaking to the room now, not the runner. They wanted a meeting, he said. Nobody asked who they were. Harlem had different kinds of weather. Some storms you could see coming. Sirens shouting, footsteps running. This storm arrived in a clean envelope. "They wanted it tonight," Bumpy continued. That changed the weight in the room. Not panic. Bumpy didn't allow panic. But gravity. Men sat heavier. Eyes shifted. One man's knee started bouncing, then stopped, when he realized Bumpy could hear it. The runner's voice came out again, carefully rehearsed. "I was told it's just a sit-down, that's all." Bumpy looked at him like he was looking through him. "A sit-down," Bumpy repeated, tasting the phrase. "Where?" The runner hesitated, then gave up the detail like it might buy him mercy. "A building off Lenox, upstairs. They said you'd know the door." Bumpy almost smiled at that. Because the arrogance wasn't subtle. "You'll know the door." That wasn't directions. That was ownership. That was an insult wearing a suit. Bumpy leaned back. The chair creaked once, loud in the sudden silence. He let it creak. Let it speak. "You tell them I received it," Bumpy said. The runner nodded too fast. Yes, sir. Bumpy held up a hand, not threatening. Just final. And you tell them something else. The boy froze. Bumpy's voice stayed soft, almost patient. Tell them if they wanted a conversation, they should have sent a man who could stand straight while he delivered it. The runner's cheeks flushed, fear and humiliation fighting for space. He started. I know what you are, Bumpy said. That's why you're still breathing. The sentence landed hard. Not because it was cruel, because it was true. The men in the room understood the distinction. Bumpy wasn't sparing the boy out of kindness. He was sparing him out of order. A code that said, messengers didn't become martyrs unless the sender wanted war. The runner backed away like the air around Bumpy could bruise him. He turned to leave. One of Bumpy's men shifted, hungry for permission to escort the boy out with fear attached. Bumpy didn't even glance at him. That restraint was the warning. That respect was the weapon. Let the boy go. Let the message travel. Let the sender believe the ritual worked. Because Bumpy understood what violent men never learned. If you interrupted a threat too early, you didn't stop it. You just made it louder. The door closed. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the room started talking all at once. Questions, anger, strategy trying to dress itself up as certainty. Bumpy, we should hit first. 20 men, that's what I heard. Bumpy lifted one finger barely. The room shut up like someone cut the power. He stared at the folded letter again, like it was a photograph of the future. What do they think this is? One man asked, quieter. A summons? Bumpy didn't answer right away. He stood, adjusted his coat like he had all the time in the world, and walked to the window. He looked down at the street, the neighborhood that carried his name in its bones, even when no one said it out loud. Harlem was moving, kids laughing, storefront lights, old women with bags, men on corners pretending they weren't watching. Community. Outsiders never understood it. They threatened Bumpy Johnson. And Harlem heard a threat to itself. Bumpy spoke without turning around. They weren't calling me to talk, he said. The room tightened. They were calling me to show me where they thought I belonged. A pause, long enough to feel like a verdict. Then Bumpy turned back, eyes calm, voice controlled. And tonight, he added, we were going to show them something else. He didn't say what, he didn't need to. He slipped the letter into his pocket like it was nothing. And that was the cold part. Not bravado, not a speech. Just a man placing his hand on a situation like you placed your palm on a table you already owned. Outside, somebody believed they'd set the terms. Inside Harlem, Bumpy Johnson was already rewriting them, quietly. Chapter 2. 20 shadows in a narrow hall. The street didn't look like a battlefield. That was the trick. Harlem kept its face on, lights in windows, radios humming behind curtains, a couple laughing too loud on the corner like nothing in the world could reach them. But the men who belonged to the neighborhood weren't laughing. They were watching, not with panic, with memory, because they knew what it meant when a night got too polite. Bumpy stepped out like he had nowhere urgent to be. Coat settled right, hat brim low, hands loose at his sides. No entourage that screamed king, no parade of weapons, just enough presence to remind the block who held the air. His people read that calm like scripture. If Bumpy was quiet, then quiet was safe. A car rolled at a distance, slow, almost respectful. Not one of his. Too clean, too confident. It didn't speed. It didn't creep. It moved like it had permission to be there. That was the first insult. The second came behind it. Men, not boys, not amateurs. 20 of them spilling out in measured steps, splitting into pairs like they'd done it before. Coats buttoned, hats low, hands kept near the places where decisions slept. They didn't look at the storefronts, didn't look at the people. They looked at the building, like the whole neighborhood was just scenery. Bumpy didn't stop walking. Dutch slid into step beside him. Older, loyal, scarred in quiet places. He leaned in close enough to speak without the street hearing. Bump, that's a lot of suits. Bumpy's eyes didn't move. Count 'em, he said. Dutch swallowed. I did. Bumpy nodded like Dutch had just confirmed the weather. 20. Not a personal argument, not revenge. A statement. A council didn't send one man to kill you. A council sent enough men to make sure nobody could call it a mistake. Bumpy kept moving. He didn't turn. He used windows the way he used people. Reflections told him everything without giving anything back. They wanted him to feel hunted. He gave them something worse. He gave them nothing. At the building off Lenox, the stoop looked ordinary. Old stone. Iron rail. A narrow entry that forced men into single file. A funnel. That wasn't an accident. That was design. Bumpy stopped at the bottom step and looked up like he was deciding whether the climb was worth his time. Then he went. One step, then another. Slow enough to insult urgency. Behind him, the 20 moved in. Boots quiet, breathing disciplined. No one spoke. You could feel Harlem holding its breath from behind the curtains. Bumpy reached the door. No sign, no name. Just wood and a brass knob, worn down by other hands, other nights. The kind of door that had seen men go in strong and come out different. He didn't knock. He turned the knob like he owned the place. Inside, the stairwell was narrow and dim, a single bulb above, weak as a confession. The air smelled like old cigarettes and cold plaster. Every sound got louder. Every footfall, every swallow. That's why they chose it. Noise made men nervous. Nervous made men reach early. Bumpy climbed without rushing. Halfway up, he heard a shift behind him, someone adjusting grip, leather squeaking softly, the sound of a decision almost made. Bumpy didn't turn. "If you came to do it," he said, voice carrying up the stairwell like smoke, "do it clean." The sentence hit them wrong. Killers expected begging, or bargaining, or bravado. They didn't expect permission. Power stole your script. That was the rule. At the top landing, there was the door the runner promised. Bumpy knew the door. He paused, just long enough. Then he opened it. The room beyond was wider than the stairwell, by design. A release, a stage, a table in the center, a lamp casting a hard circle of light, smoke hanging low like a ceiling, 2 chairs placed like conversation was expected. But the corners weren't furnished for talk. Too many shadows, too many bodies standing where polite men didn't stand, hands near waistlines. Eyes trained not on Bumpy's face, but on his shoulders, his pockets. They weren't there to talk him down. They were there to watch him die without surprise. Bumpy stepped into the light and stopped, not at the table in front of it. He made them adjust to him, not the other way around. A man with a thin mustache stepped forward, slick hair, expensive suit. Smile like danger was a tool he could put back in a drawer. "Mr. Johnson," he said, smooth as oil. "You came alone." Bumpy looked at him like the man was a chair that had started talking. "Looks like I came with company," Bumpy said. The smile tightened. "Just precaution." Bumpy let silence sit. "Precaution is one thing," he said. "A parade is another." He watched the mustache man's eyes flick, quick, controlled, toward the shadows. That's how you spotted the real hand. The speaker always checked with the decider. Bumpy spoke before the speaker could recover. "You sent 20 men," he said. "So, don't waste my time with manners." No answer. Somewhere in the back, a stance shifted. Subtle, but Bumpy heard it. Bodies confessed before mouths did. The mustache man gestured to the chair. "Sit." Bumpy didn't move. "Tell me what you need to tell me standing up," he said. The chair was supposed to lower him, physically, socially. Put him in the posture of a man being addressed by higher authority. Bumpy refused the posture. Now the room had to decide. Force him, or proceed without the ritual. Forcing him would admit fear. Bumpy walked to the table, slow, and placed his palm on it. Not a slam. A claim. "You understand what you brought?" he asked, quiet. "You didn't bring pressure." He looked around the corners. "You brought proof you couldn't come here with one man in a straight back." He withdrew his hand and stepped slightly out of the lamp's center, letting the light cut his face in half. Harder to read, harder to frame. And that's when he noticed it again. Not all 20 stared at him the same way. Some had hunger, some had fear, some had nothing but a paycheck in their eyes. But one man, tall, quiet, watched him like a puzzle, curious, controlled, not eager. Bumpy held his gaze a half-second longer. The tall man didn't look away. The air cooled. Bumpy kept his voice calm. "Which one of you was here to talk?" he asked. "And which one of you was here to make sure I didn't?" The silence that followed weighed more than any gun, because now the room had to choose its story, and Bumpy, standing in their light, surrounded by their numbers, had already started writing a different ending. Chapter 3, Respect is a Currency, and someone's overdrawn Bumpy didn't reach for a gun. That's what made the room uneasy. A man with a pistol was a problem. A man with nothing in his hands, calm inside your trap, was a question you couldn't answer without exposing yourself. The mustache man tried to keep the air civilized, like civility could handcuff inevitability. "We're trying to prevent misunderstandings," he said, as if the 20 men in the corners were decorations. Bumpy's eyes moved across the room again, not scanning for exits, scanning for ownership. He knew what they wanted: a performance of fear, a raised voice, a wrong move they could label necessary. So Bumpy gave them something they couldn't label: principle. He rested both hands on the table, palms down, open, visible. He showed peace so clearly, it became dominance. "You didn't come for understanding," he said. "You came for obedience." The mustache man's smile flickered. "You know there are rules," the man said. Bumpy nodded. "Yeah," he said, "there are." He let the beat land. "But they're not yours." From deeper in the shadows, an older voice answered, rough, impatient, the engine behind the polished front. "You talk like Harlem was a country." Bumpy stared into the darkness where the voice lived. "It was," he said, "to the people who got buried here." The room tightened. Not because it was poetry, because it was true. Bumpy leaned forward slightly. "You sent 20 men," he said. "That means you didn't come to negotiate. You came to teach." The mustache man lifted his hands a little. "Fake peace." "Teach?" he echoed. "Teach me to sit when you told me to sit," Bumpy said. "Teach me to answer when you called. Teach me to remember my place." Silence. A man in the corner coughed. Small, involuntary. Like his body wanted to interrupt before his mind got implicated. Bumpy continued, calm. "But here's what you didn't understand," he said. "My place was already decided." He tapped the table once with a fingertip. Soft. Surgical. "In Harlem, respect was currency," he said. "And tonight somebody walked in here, spending money they didn't have." The mustache man's jaw tightened. He glanced again toward the shadows. Bumpy watched him do it. Then Bumpy spoke to him like he was doing him a favor. "You're the mouth," Bumpy said, "and so use it right." The smile died. "I'm trying to keep you alive," the mustache man said, rehearsed mercy, offered like leverage. Bumpy tilted his head. "Alive," he repeated. "That's what you think you're offering?" He let silence stretch until it hurt. Then he lowered his voice. "You know what you're really offering me?" he asked. No answer. "You're offering humiliation," Bumpy said. "And you think I'll trade dignity for breath. A beat. I don't." That was the moral layer. Not ego, principle. A man announcing he wouldn't live cheaply. The older voice moved closer. The lamp caught a jawline, the shine of a ring. "This isn't a sermon," the shadow man said, "and this is a decision." "Good," Bumpy said. "Then decide it like men." The ring glinted. "You stop certain things," the shadow man said. "You stay in your lane. You show proper respect." Bumpy's eyes didn't blink. "You wanted me to stop feeding my neighborhood?" Bumpy asked. The mustache man tried to interrupt. "This isn't about—" "It is," Bumpy said, cutting him off without raising his voice. "Everything is." Because business wasn't just money. It was who got paid, who got protected, who got to walk home without trouble. Outsiders called that rackets. Harlem called it survival. Bumpy leaned in. You wanted tribute, he said. Say, tribute. The shadow man's tone sharpened. Watch your mouth. Bumpy stayed calm. I was, he said. That's why I was still polite. He stepped away from the lamp's center, just slightly so the light didn't frame him like a victim. Now, he was harder to read. That small change made the room feel it. Bumpy had stopped playing their scene. He'd started directing it. He looked at the tall, quiet man again. You were quiet, Bumpy said. That meant you were either the smartest one here or the one with the job nobody wanted to admit. The tall man didn't look away. Bumpy turned back to the room. You wanted respect, he said. You didn't get it by sending numbers. He paused. You got it by standing in front of me and saying what you meant. The shadow man stepped forward another inch, still protecting his face with darkness. I meant you're getting too big, he said. Bumpy nodded slowly like he'd been waiting for honesty. There it is, he said. Not rules, not order. A beat. Fear. The mustache man's voice rose, losing the polish. You don't get to call it fear when you've been... I do, Bumpy said. Because you brought 20 men to talk to one. Silence. Then Bumpy delivered it, quiet and final. You weren't here to correct me, he said. You were here to remind yourselves you still existed. The sentence humiliated the room without a single slur. It took their myth and made it sound like insecurity with a budget. For a second, Bumpy could feel it. The room wanted to punish him for clarity. Men stopped being strategic and started being emotional. Bumpy didn't flinch. He waited, calm as a man watching a fuse burn down. Then he leaned slightly toward the shadow man. You want to know the difference between me and you? He asked. No answer. I can walk outside tomorrow and children will still wave at me, Bumpy said. Can you? The air froze. Legacy, spoken plain. Not a boast, a verdict. Bumpy let the silence sit until it became unbearable. Then he said almost gently, If you were going to kill me, he said, don't do it over money. A beat. Do it over respect. And that was when the room finally understood. He wasn't begging for his life. He was forcing them to admit what kind of men they were, right before they decided whether to pull a trigger. Chapter 4. The one who walked out. The hand in the corner didn't finish its journey. It stopped halfway to the pocket, trembling just enough to betray the man holding it. Bumpy saw that tremble and understood the room's true problem. 20 bodies, one plan, and no shared courage. He didn't move toward them. He didn't retreat from them. He just looked slowly until his gaze pinned the mustache man first, then slid past him into the shadows where the real voice lived. You brought a lot of witnesses, Bumpy said quietly, but not one judge. No one answered, because the council didn't want a messy death. They wanted a clean disappearance, a body that never became a story, a name that turned into a rumor. But Harlem didn't run on rumors. Harlem ran on what people could swear they saw. Bumpy took a step, small, deliberate, toward the center of the room. Not charging, not fleeing, just claiming a better angle, the way a chess player claimed a square and dared you to pretend you didn't notice. The shadow man stepped forward enough for the lamp to catch him. This isn't a sermon, he said again. This is a decision. Good, Bumpy said. Then, decide it like men. You think you can talk your way out of this? The shadow man asked. I didn't talk my way out of nothing, Bumpy said. I stood my way through it. He glanced at the corners. He knew what their numbers meant. He knew what their presence said. If you kill me, he said, you better understand what you were buying. And what's that? The shadow man asked, bitterness rising. A war you can't finish, Bumpy said, not bravado. Logistics. Because the community layer wasn't a speech, it was infrastructure. Harlem had eyes. Harlem had cousins. Harlem had men who didn't need permission to avenge an invasion. Bumpy wasn't threatening them with a gun. He was threatening them with the neighborhood's memory. He turned toward the tall, quiet man in the half-shadow. You, Bumpy said. You were still breathing steady. The tall man didn't answer. You weren't here for the noise, Bumpy continued. So tell me, were you here to make this clean? or to make sure it happened at all. The mustache man tried to interrupt. Bumpy cut him off with a glance. The mustache man stopped mid-breath. Calm dominance, no shouting, still obedience. The shadow man's patience snapped. Enough, he said and lifted a hand, just enough. A signal. The room loaded up with intention. Hands shifted under coats, bodies tightened. Bumpy didn't blink. He reached into his inside pocket. A few guns rose an inch. Then he pulled out something flat, the folded letter. He placed it on the table like a playing card. "You sent this," Bumpy said. "This was your invitation." He tapped it once. "And this was my reply." He didn't open it, didn't read it. He stared at them until they felt the weight of what he wasn't doing. The tall, quiet man finally spoke, low and measured. "What's the reply?" Bumpy looked at him like he'd been waiting for that voice. "My reply was simple," he said. "Only one of you was leaving here with a message." The room froze. The mustache man's face drained. "That's not how this works." "It is tonight," Bumpy said. "Because tonight you stepped into Harlem and tried to make me small." Then he spoke to the hired men, the anonymous ones. "You boys got families?" he asked. No answer. But the question landed anyway. Killers could handle insults. They could handle threats. They didn't handle being reminded they were human. "Some of you came here thinking you were soldiers," Bumpy said. "But soldiers got flags. You got receipts." A pause. "And receipts don't get remembered." The shadow man snarled, "You're stalling." Bumpy shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm choosing." His gaze stopped on one man, midway back, young, jaw clenched too tight, eyes avoiding Bumpy. A man trying to disappear inside the group. Bumpy pointed, not aggressively, precisely. "You," he said. "Step forward." The man flinched. He didn't move. Bumpy waited, steady as a stone. Then he repeated softer. "I said step forward." The young man took one step, then another. Now he was in the edge of the lamplight, exposed. Suit didn't fit right. Hands didn't know where to live. He looked like a man handed a role he hadn't rehearsed. Bumpy studied him. "What did they tell you?" Bumpy asked. The man's lips parted. No sound at first. Bumpy waited. "They said we'd be in and out," the man whispered. "In and out," Bumpy repeated. "Like I'm a store." The man's eyes flicked toward the shadow man, desperate for help. Bumpy caught it. "Don't look at him," Bumpy said gently. He wasn't dying tonight. That line cut the room in half, because now Bumpy had created a new order. Bumpy decided who lived. Bumpy decided who spoke. Bumpy decided who left. Bumpy stepped closer. "What's your name?" he asked. "Eddie," the young man said. "You the one they wanted pulling the trigger?" Bumpy asked. Eddie swallowed. "No." "Then why you here?" Bumpy asked. "Money," Eddie whispered. Bumpy nodded like that was the only honest thing said all night. Then he asked the question that broke the boy's spine without touching him. "You want to die tonight, Eddie?" Eddie's eyes widened. "No." "Good," Bumpy said. "Because you weren't." The room snapped with confusion. Bumpy lifted a hand, slow, palm out. Not begging, commanding. "Put your hands down," he said. They didn't. "I said," he repeated, calm but colder. "Put your hands down." One gun lowered a fraction, then another. Not because they respected him, because they believed him. Bumpy looked at Eddie. "You're going to walk out that door," he said. "Alone." Eddie stared, confused. "Why?" Bumpy leaned in, voice low enough to feel like a secret and a sentence at the same time. "Because you're going to tell them what happened here," he said. "And you're going to say it right." The shadow man barked. "He's not leaving." Bumpy didn't look at him. He kept his eyes on Eddie. "You hear him?" Bumpy asked softly. "That's the man who hired you to die with him." Then, Bumpy finally faced the shadow man. "You sent 20 men," Bumpy said. "Now you're going to tell me I can't send one back?" "You don't have that authority," the shadow man hissed. "I did in Harlem," Bumpy said. Then came the rule, quiet, controlled. Anybody who stops him from leaving dies first. No shout, no flourish. just a rule. Eddie backed toward the door, hands shaking. He opened it and stepped into the stairwell. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and that click sounded like something historic. Bumpy turned back to the room. They had come to erase him. Instead, he'd sent their own man out into the world, carrying the story of their failure. "You wanted a message delivered," Bumpy said. A pause. "You got one." Chapter 5. The message that travels faster than bullets. Eddie's footsteps faded down the stairwell, and the room didn't follow. That told Bumpy everything. If they were truly a council, somebody would have moved. Somebody would have tested the rule. But nobody did. 20 men had come to kill him. Now they stood still, listening to a door shut like a judge's gavel. Bumpy didn't celebrate it. He turned back toward them, and his calm made their weapons look childish, like knives pulled on a man who didn't bleed the same. The mustache man tried to stitch the room back into negotiation. "You've made your point," he said. "My point?" Bumpy repeated softly. "No." He walked around the table and sat in the chair they'd offered earlier. Not because they told him to sit, because now the chair belonged to him. He sat like a man at home, back straight, hands open. It didn't make him smaller. It made them look like they built the room to host him. Bumpy looked at the shadow man. "You don't like this," he said. "You think you won something?" the shadow man snapped. "I think you lost something," Bumpy said. The mustache man tried again. "This doesn't have to go further. We can—" Bumpy lifted his hand slightly. "Stop." The mustache man stopped mid-sentence. Bumpy leaned back. "You understand what you did tonight?" he asked. No answer. So he defined it. "You came into Harlem with numbers," he said, "with arrogance, with a plan to make me a story that ends." He paused. "And instead, you became a story Harlem tells." The shadow man sneered. "You sent out a messenger. That's all." "You keep telling yourself that," Bumpy said. Then he lowered his voice. "That boy was going to walk into whatever room you sat in," Bumpy said, "and he was going to tell you what 20 men couldn't do." A council survived on belief. Bumpy had planted doubt. Bumpy leaned forward. "You know why I let him walk?" he asked. Silence. "Because I don't need to kill 20 men to speak to you," he said. "I only need one mouth." A pause. "And I don't even need that mouth to lie. Truth does fine." The mustache man asked, strained. "What message did you send?" Bumpy looked at him like the question was almost innocent. "Tell your council," Bumpy said, slow and clear. "They don't get to send death into Harlem like it's mail." Silence. "Tell them next time they want to speak to me," he continued, "they send one man, with a name. And he knocks like a man." He let that sit. Then he added the part that made restraint feel like domination. "And tell them, if they ever send 20 again," Bumpy said softly, "Harlem won't send one back." No raised voice, no theatrics, just a sentence built like a courthouse. The shadow man flared. "You think Harlem is yours?" "No," Bumpy said. "I think Harlem is Harlem's." He rose slow. The men tensed. "Relax," Bumpy said. "I'm leaving." He walked to the door without hurry. He didn't look back as he opened it. Halfway out, he paused and turned once, just once, like he was granting them a final lesson. "You boys like councils," he said, "because councils let you hide. A beat. But the street don't hide." He looked at the shadow man, "And neither did I." Then he stepped into the stairwell and went down, his footsteps steady, each one a quiet verdict. Behind him, nobody followed. They didn't shoot. They just stood there with 20 men and no victory, listening to him leave, like the night belonged to him. Chapter 6. Legacy in the brickwork. Bumpy came out of that building the same way he went in. No sprint, no victory walk. No looking over his shoulder, like the night belonged to somebody else. The street received him like it had been waiting to exhale. A man sweeping a storefront slowed his broom. Two kids stopped arguing long enough to watch him pass. A woman on a stoop tightened her shawl, not from cold, instinct. Harlem didn't ask questions out loud. Harlem listened. Because when danger came to a neighborhood, it didn't only come for the man named in the threat. It came for everyone who stood behind that man's reputation like it was a wall. Dutch slid into step beside him again. Loyal men knew when silence was part of the job. Then Dutch asked the only question that mattered. Did they touch you? Bumpy didn't look at him. No, he said. Dutch exhaled, relief trying to show itself. Bumpy didn't let it live too long. And they won't, he added. Dutch stared. How'd you do it, Bump? 20 men? I didn't do nothing, Bumpy said. Dutch frowned. Bumpy turned his head slightly, calm in his eyes. I let them show themselves, he said. That's all. They walked. Behind them, upstairs, those men would be arguing in whispers, blaming, recalculating, trying to retell the night so they still looked powerful. But the problem was already loose in the city. Eddie, a single mouth, a living receipt. He would walk into a room of men who believed they ran things, and he would have to say it out loud. What his eyes saw. Bumpy Johnson didn't panic. He didn't plead. He didn't die. He chose who lived. And the moment Eddie said that truth, something would shift. Not with gunfire, with shame. Because power hated embarrassment more than it hated challenge. Bumpy turned down a street where buildings leaned close, brick and iron pressed together like the neighborhood was eavesdropping on itself. A couple of men stepped out of a doorway as he approached, present, not blocking. One of them asked, respectful, "You good, Bumpy?" Bumpy paused just long enough to honor the question. "I'm good," he said. Then he added instruction, not reassurance. "Keep your heads," he told them. "No extra." The man nodded immediately. "Yes, Bumpy." That mattered. After nights like that, hotheads wanted to celebrate with fire. They wanted to prove strength by starting fights they didn't need. They wanted to turn a quiet win into a loud war. Bumpy wouldn't let it. Legacy didn't come from noise. It came from controlling what happened after. Dutch leaned in again. "They're gonna come back," he said. "You know that." Bumpy nodded once. "Maybe," he said. Dutch blinked. "Maybe?" Bumpy stopped walking. He looked down the block, steady. "They came tonight because they thought I got comfortable," Bumpy said. "They thought I forgot what it feels like to be hunted." He turned to Dutch. "I don't forget," he said. Then he lowered his voice. "And they didn't come back tonight because they realized something." Dutch waited. "They realized they can't control how Harlem tells a story," Bumpy said. That was the legacy layer, plain and sharp. Reputations outlived bullets. A council could kill a man and still lose if the neighborhood remembered him as a protector and remembered them as invaders. Dutch asked, quieter, "So what now?" Bumpy started walking again, unhurried. "Now we act like we've been here," he said. That line carried the whole philosophy. No celebration, no tantrum, no open war. Just continuation. Governance. Harlem waking up tomorrow and seeing the lights still on, the rules still intact, the children still able to run to the corner store. They passed a church, dark windows, quiet stone. The kind of building that had heard prayers for mercy and prayers for revenge. Bumpy glanced at it for half a second. Not pious, not sentimental. Aware. Dutch shook his head like he still couldn't believe it. "You really let one of them walk," he said. "I did," Bumpy said. Most men want to be feared," Bumpy said, cutting him off gently. He paused. "I wanted to be understood, and that was the truth beneath the night. It wasn't the violence Bumpy could do that made him powerful. It was the violence he could do, and chose not to. So everyone in that room understood who could have ended it and who couldn't. Harlem didn't need a body to believe. Harlem needed a message, and a message walked out alive, carrying the kind of truth that traveled faster than bullets and lasted longer than threats. A council could send 20 men to Harlem, and Harlem could send one back, not with blood, with discipline, with restraint, with Bumpy Johnson standing still in a room built for his death, and leaving it like it belonged to him.